For 14 months, Darcel Reed had worked inside Alec Holt's London estate. She cleaned mirrors that reflected a life she would never live, pressed sheets that cost more than her weekly wages, polished dark wood surfaces that gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The estate sprawled across Kensington like a fortress, all marble and tall windows overlooking a city where she could barely afford a cramped bedsit. Alec Holt was someone she kept her distance from. When she heard his footsteps, she moved to another room. Not because he had ever been cruel to her, but because men like him existed in a different world. She had glimpsed him through doorways, dark hair slicked back, gray eyes that seemed to see everything, tattoos creeping up his neck beneath perfectly tailored navy suits. He had never spoken to her directly, though sometimes she felt his gaze linger a moment too long when she passed through a room. She told herself she imagined it. 90,000 pounds in debt. The number lived in her chest like a weight she could not shift. Her mother's ovarian cancer had devoured their savings over 2 brutal years before claiming her life 14 months ago. 52,000 pounds in private treatment bills still arrived with mechanical regularity, reminders that even death demanded payment. Then, 8 months ago, a drunk driver running a red light at 2:30 in the morning had stolen Leo's ability to walk. Her 19-year-old brother now sat in a wheelchair in their crumbling Brixton flat, attempting physiotherapy through YouTube videos because specialists cost money they did not have. Another 38,000 pounds added to the crushing weight. Darcel had signed payment plans that would follow her into her 40s, accepted interest rates that should have been illegal. She worked 3 jobs to keep them both alive. 5 in the morning she woke. 6 she arrived at the estate. 3 in the afternoon she returned home to care for Leo. 6 in the evening she worked at the pub until midnight. Weekends meant office cleaning shifts. She slept on the tube, survived on instant coffee and the occasional leftover sandwich from the pub. 4 hours of sleep if she was lucky. Her body ran on caffeine and sheer will. That Thursday night, the antique clock in the entrance hall chimed 8 as she finished her shift. November in London meant early darkness and cold that bit through cheap coats. Rain had started, streaking the tall windows. Beatrice Holt, Alec's sister who managed the household, offered her supper. Darcel declined politely. She had a pub shift starting at 9. She pulled her hood up and stepped into the rain. 4 blocks to the underground station. She had walked this route hundreds of times. This neighborhood belonged to Alec Holt, his territory. It was supposed to be safe, but tonight felt different, quieter. Most shops had closed early, leaving only security lights casting everything in amber shadows. Her trainers splashed through puddles, water soaking through to her socks. She kept her head down, too exhausted to pay attention, feet moving on autopilot. The alley between 2 buildings was narrow and dark. She had passed it 1,000 times without incident. But tonight, 2 figures emerged from the shadows. Blocking the pavement, Darcel stopped. Her heart slammed against her ribs. "Evening, love," one said. Thick Cockney accent, shaved head, a snake tattoo coiling up his wrist beneath his sleeve. The second man was taller, broader, silent. She tried to step around them. The first man shifted, cutting off her path. "Where you rushing off to, then?" "Home." Her voice came steadier than she felt. "Let me pass." "Just need your bag and phone. Make it easy on yourself." Darcel handed everything over without resistance. She was too tired to fight over 20 pounds. But then his eyes dropped to her shirt. Her cleaning uniform was visible where her jacket hung open. A simple light blue polo with a small dark emblem embroidered over her heart. The Holt estate insignia. The man stepped closer. Rain ran down his face. "You work for Holt." Ice flooded her veins. "I am just a cleaner. I do not know anything." The man looked at his companion. His teeth showed in something that was not quite a smile. "Callum's going to love this. Perfect message to send the boss." "Wait, please." The first punch came from nowhere. It caught her across the cheekbone, and pain exploded white and hot behind her eyes. She staggered. Before she could recover, hands grabbed her arms with bruising force. She tried to scream. A palm clamped over her mouth. "This is what happens," the man hissed close to her ear, "when Holt thinks he owns every inch of the city, when he thinks everything here belongs to him." The second blow caught her ribs. She heard something crack. Then another fist, and another. Pain layered on pain, until she could not tell one hit from the next. Her knees buckled. They held her upright, kept hitting. In her fading consciousness, there was only one thought. Leo, her brother alone in their flat, waiting for her. He had no one else. Someone grabbed her hair, wrenched her head back violently. She saw the fist coming toward her face one final time before the world went black. Darcel collapsed onto the wet pavement. The men stepped back, surveying their work. The message had been delivered. They disappeared into the shadows, leaving her broken in the alley. 4 blocks away, Alec Holt returned from a meeting in Shoreditch. The silver sedan pulled through the estate gates at 9:30, rain hammering the windscreen. He had been thinking about Callum's crew pushing into his territory, about respect that needed to be reclaimed. Then his headlights swept across the stone steps leading to his front door, and he saw her. A woman sprawled on the wet stone, long dark hair spilling around her shoulders, body motionless. Something primal seized his chest. He knew before he reached her. He knew. Alex slammed the car into park and threw open the door. He took the steps 3 at a time, expensive leather shoes slipping on rain-slicked stone, and dropped to his knees beside her. When he rolled her onto her back, rage unlike anything he had ever known flooded his veins. Her face was grotesquely swollen. Blood leaked from her mouth and nose. Her left eye was bruised nearly shut. But it was her shirt that made his hands shake. The light blue polo, the small emblem over her chest, his estate, his staff, his territory, his Darcel. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck and felt a faint pulse. Relief crashed through him so violently his vision blurred. "Who the fuck touched you?" The words ripped out of him like something feral. His voice cracked with rage that bordered on anguish. "Who did this?" His hands hovered over her body, unsure where to touch without causing more pain. Blood stained her clothes, her skin, the stone beneath her. Someone had beaten her on his doorstep, on his territory. Someone had put their hands on what was his. She stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open just enough to see his face above hers. The tattoos on his neck and chest, visible where his black dress shirt hung unbuttoned. The raw distress twisting his features into something almost unrecognizable. She tried to speak. Only a broken moan emerged. Then one word, thin and desperate. "Leo." Her brother's name. Even broken and bleeding, she was thinking of someone else. Alex scooped her into his arms, her weight so slight it made fury coil tighter in his chest. He carried her through the door, shouting for Beatrice, for his men, for the private doctor. As he laid her on the sofa in his study, blood staining the leather, Alec Holt made a decision that would reshape everything. Whoever had touched her would not simply die. They would beg for death long before he granted it. Because Darcel Reed might not have known it, but she had been his from the moment she stepped into his home 14 months ago. And no one took what belonged to Alec Holt. Beatrice appeared in the doorway of the study within seconds, her face draining of color when she saw Darcel's broken form on the leather sofa. She pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes wide with horror. "Get Dr. Kensington, now!" Alec's voice was lethal calm, the kind of quiet that preceded violence. "I do not care where he is or what he is doing. Tell him if he is not here in 15 minutes, I will burn his practice to the ground." Beatrice fled. Alec could hear her frantic voice in the corridor, the urgency carrying through the walls. He turned back to Darcel, kneeling beside the sofa. Blood seeped into the leather beneath her, dark and spreading. Her breathing was shallow, each inhale accompanied by a wet rattle that made his jaw clench. Broken ribs, possibly punctured lung. Her face was unrecognizable under the swelling, purple and red blooming across delicate bone structure. Rage lived in his chest like something with teeth. Arthur Finch, his lead enforcer, entered without knocking. The older man had been with Alex since the beginning, 15 years of loyalty and blood. He took one look at Darcel and his expression hardened. "Who is she?" "Mine." The word came out before Alec could think. "She works here, cleaning staff." Arthur's eyes narrowed slightly. In all the years they had worked together, he had never heard that tone in Alec's voice. Possessive, protective, dangerous. "This happened on our territory?" "4 blocks from here. Someone left her on my doorstep like a calling card." Alec's hands flexed, imagining them around a throat. "Get every man we have on the street. I want eyes on every corner, every alley, every rat hole in this city. Someone saw something." Arthur pulled out his phone, already dialing. "Callum's crew has been pushing lately." "Then we push back harder." Alec looked down at Darcel's battered face. "Find out who touched her. I want names, addresses, family trees. I want to know what they ate for breakfast. And when we find them, bring them to the warehouse, alive." Alec's voice dropped to something barely human. "They do not get to die quickly." Arthur left to mobilize the men. Within minutes, Alec could hear movement throughout the estate. Doors opening and closing, vehicles starting. His entire organization shifting into motion like a machine built for retribution. Dr. Julian Kensington arrived 12 minutes later, medical bag in hand, still wearing dinner clothes. He was in his 50s, gray at the temples, and had been patching up Alec's people for nearly a decade. Discretion was worth more than gold in their world. He took one look at Darcel and his professional mask, slipped for just a moment. Christ, what happened? "Fix her." Alec stepped back, giving the doctor room to work. "I do not care what it costs." Kensington set his bag on the side table and began his examination with practiced efficiency. He checked her pulse, her pupils, the angle of her jaw. His hands moved gently over her ribs, and even unconscious, Darcel flinched. 3 broken ribs, possibly 4. Severe facial trauma. Concussion, definitely. I need to get her stable before I can assess internal injuries. He looked up at Alec. "She needs a hospital." "No hospitals." "Alec, she could have internal bleeding." "Then deal with it here." Alec's tone left no room for argument. Hospitals mean police. Police mean questions. This stays in house. Kensington's lips pressed into a thin line, but he nodded. He had learned long ago not to argue with Alec Holt. He began pulling supplies from his bag. Bandages, antiseptics, syringes. Beatrice returned with towels and a basin of warm water. She hovered near the door, wringing her hands. "Can I help?" "Hot water and clean sheets," Kensington said without looking up. "We will need to move her somewhere more suitable for treatment. A bedroom, preferably." "The guest suite on the second floor," Alec said. "Next to mine." Beatrice blinked, but did not comment. She disappeared again. Kensington cleaned the blood from Darcell's face with careful precision, revealing the full extent of the damage. Her left eye was swollen completely shut. Her bottom lip had split in 2 places. Bruises in the shape of fingers marked her throat. Someone had tried to strangle her. The realization hit Alec like a physical blow. They had not just beaten her, they had tried to kill her. On his street, wearing his emblem. "Who is she?" Kensington asked quietly, threading a needle to stitch the worst of the cuts. "Someone under my protection." Alec watched the needle pierce her skin, each stitch precise. "Someone who should never have been touched." "She is lucky to be alive." "She will be luckier when I find who did this." Alec pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages from Arthur. His men were already spreading through the city like a virus, shaking down informants, calling in favors, applying pressure to anyone who might know something. Kensington worked in silence for 20 minutes, cleaning wounds, applying bandages, stabilizing broken bones. When he finally stepped back, Darcell looked slightly more human, though the damage was still devastating. "I have given her something for the pain. She will sleep for several hours. When she wakes, she will hurt. Badly." He began packing his supplies. "No solid food for 48 hours. Monitor her breathing. If it becomes labored or she starts coughing blood, call me immediately. She will be watched constantly. I will return tomorrow morning to check on her." Kensington paused at the door. Alec, whoever did this, meant to send a message. They sent it. Alec's gray eyes were flat, emotionless. "Now I will send mine." Arthur returned as Kensington left, his expression grim. "We found the scene, 4 blocks east, in the alley between the betting shop and the old pharmacy. Blood on the pavement. Scuff marks, signs of a struggle. Witnesses? Working on it. But I found this." Arthur held up a phone in a clear plastic bag. "Left at the scene, probably hers." Alec took the bag. The phone screen was cracked, but still functional. "Unlock it." "Already did. Last call was to someone named Leo, multiple times throughout the day. There are texts, too. She was telling him she would be late." Leo, the name Darcell had whispered before losing consciousness. "Find out who Leo is. Find out where he lives. I want him brought here." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "You think he is involved?" "No." Alec looked back at Darcell's broken form. "But she called for him, which means he matters to her. And anything that matters to her is now under my protection." Arthur nodded and left. Alec pulled a chair close to the sofa and sat. He would not leave her. Not tonight. Not until she woke, and he could see life return to her eyes. Outside, his city was about to burn. But here, in this room, all that mattered was the shallow rise and fall of her chest. She was alive. For now, that was enough. Tomorrow, The reckoning would begin. But tonight, Alec Holt carried Darcel Reed up the curved staircase to the second floor, cradling her against his chest as though she were made of glass. Beatrice had prepared the guest suite, the one with pale cream walls and large windows overlooking the gardens, the one directly next to his own bedroom. He laid her on the bed with a gentleness that would have shocked anyone who knew him. The crisp white sheets immediately bloomed with spots of red where her wounds seeped through bandages. He did not care. Sheets could be replaced. She could not. Beatrice stood in the doorway, watching her brother with an expression somewhere between concern and confusion. In 15 years of running this household, she had never seen him like this. Alec Holt did not carry people to bed. He did not hover. He did not look at anyone the way he was looking at the broken woman before him. "I will sit with her," Beatrice offered quietly. "You should rest." "No." The word came out harder than he intended. He softened his tone. "I will stay." "Alec, you have been awake for nearly 20 hours. You have a meeting with the dockyard suppliers at 8 tomorrow morning. Cancel it." Beatrice opened her mouth to protest, then thought better of it. She had learned to recognize when her brother's mind was set. This was one of those times. "I will bring you coffee then, and something to eat." Just the coffee. She left, her footsteps fading down the corridor. Alec pulled the chair from the corner and positioned it beside the bed. Close enough to reach Darcel if she needed him. Close enough to hear any change in her breathing. The room fell into silence, broken only by the soft sounds of her struggling to breathe through swollen passages. Each inhale was labored, each exhale a testament to her body's determination to survive. Alec studied her face in the dim light from the bedside lamp. Even battered and bruised, he could see the delicate bone structure beneath. High cheekbones, a straight nose, now slightly crooked from the beating. Lips that would be full and soft when the swelling went down. He had watched her for months without truly seeing her. Now he could not look away. His phone vibrated. "Arthur. We found him. Leo Reed, 19 years old, lives in a third-floor walk-up in Brixton, paraplegic. Wheelchair bound after a traffic accident 8 months ago." Her brother. The reason she worked herself to exhaustion. The reason she had 3 jobs and shadows under her eyes that never faded. "Bring him here." "Tonight? It is past 11. "Now, Arthur, I do not care what time it is. Bring him here and be gentle about it. He has been through enough." Alec's grip tightened on the phone. "And Arthur, find out everything. Medical records, bills, debts. I want to know exactly what she has been dealing with." "Understood." The line went dead. Alec set his phone on the nightstand and leaned back in the chair. His mind was already working through logistics. Leo would need round-the-clock care, physical therapy, specialized equipment. Whatever it took to make sure Darcel never had to choose between her brother's well-being and her own survival again. Beatrice returned with coffee, setting the cup on the nightstand without comment. She glanced at Darcel, then at her brother. "She must be very special. She works here. She was hurt on my territory. That makes her my responsibility." "Is that what this is? Responsibility?" Beatrice's voice held no judgment, only curiosity. Alec did not answer. He did not know how to put into words what he barely understood himself. All he knew was that seeing Darcel broken on his doorstep had unleashed something primal in him, something possessive and violent and utterly irrational. Get some rest, Bee. Tomorrow will be difficult. His sister hesitated, then left him alone with his thoughts and the steady rhythm of Darcel's breathing. Time moved strangely in that room. Minutes felt like hours. Alec drank his coffee without tasting it, checked his phone compulsively for updates from his men scattered across the city. 3 different crews reported back with fragments of information. A witness who saw 2 men leaving the alley around 8:30. Another who recognized one of them. A low-level enforcer who worked for Callum's organization. A third who confirmed Callum had been bragging about sending Alec a message. Each piece of information fueled the cold fury building in his chest. Callum had always been reckless, always pushing boundaries. But this crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. You did not touch another man's people. You did not brutalize innocent women to make a point. And Callum had touched her, his Darcel. At 12:30, Arthur called again. "We have the brother. He is frightened but unharmed. We explained his sister was hurt but safe. He is asking questions. Bring him directly to this room, carefully. If anyone so much as bumps his wheelchair going up those steps, they will answer to me." 5 minutes later, Alec heard the commotion in the corridor. Voices, the soft whir of wheels, a young man's panicked questions. The door opened. Arthur guided a wheelchair through, and Alec got his first look at Leo Reed. He was young, barely out of boyhood, with the same dark hair and delicate features as his sister. But where Darcel's eyes held exhaustion, Leo's held terror. He took one look at the figure in the bed and his face crumpled. Darcel. The name came out broken. He tried to wheel himself closer, but his hands were shaking too badly to grip the wheels properly. Alex stood, moved behind the wheelchair, and pushed Leo to the bedside without a word. Leo reached for his sister's hand, the one not wrapped in bandages, and clutched it like a lifeline. Tears streamed down his face. "What happened? Who did this?" "The men who brought me here. They would not tell me anything. They just said she was hurt. They said I needed to come with them." His voice cracked. "Is she going to die?" "No." Alec's voice cut through the panic with absolute certainty. "She will recover. I have the best doctor in London caring for her." Leo looked up at him for the first time, really looked at him. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Fear followed. "You are Alec Holt." "I am." "Why is my sister in your house?" "Why is she?" Leo's gaze swept over Darcel's battered face, and fresh tears fell. "Who did this to her?" "People who made a very serious mistake." Alec moved to stand at the foot of the bed, his presence commanding the room. "Your sister works for me. She was attacked on my territory while wearing my emblem. That makes what happened to her my responsibility. My failure." "I do not understand." "You do not need to understand. You need to know that your sister is safe now. You are both safe, and the people who hurt her will pay for what they have done." Leo looked between Alec and his unconscious sister, trying to process information that made no sense. His world had been small, manageable. Now it was spiraling into something dark and dangerous. "I want to stay with her." "You will." Alec nodded to Arthur, who had remained by the door. "Arthur will show you to the adjoining room. You will have everything you need. Medical care, equipment, anything." "I cannot afford." "That means I provide for your needs." Leo stared at Alec Holt, this man whose name was whispered in their neighborhood with equal parts fear and respect. This man whose world existed so far above theirs, it might as well have been on another planet. And now that man was offering protection, care, things that sounded too good to be true, because in Leo's experience, nothing came without a price. Why? The question came out smaller than he intended. Why would you do this for us? We are nobody to you. Something flickered across Alec's face, something dangerous and possessive that made Leo's breath catch. Your sister is not nobody. The words were quiet but absolute. Not to me. Before Leo could process what that meant, Arthur stepped forward and began wheeling him toward the door that connected to the next room. Leo twisted in his chair, unwilling to leave Darcel, but exhaustion and shock were winning. He had been asleep when Alec's men arrived at their flat, had been dragged from bed and brought here without explanation. His mind was still catching up with reality. The adjoining room was larger than their entire flat in Brixton. A proper hospital bed had already been set up, complete with railings and controls. Medical equipment lined one wall, a private bathroom with grab bars and a roll-in shower, everything he needed but could never afford. Get some rest, Arthur said, not unkindly. Your sister will want to see you when she wakes. Leo said nothing as Arthur left, closing the door but not locking it. He sat in his wheelchair in the middle of this impossible room and let himself cry, for Darcel, for the unfairness of everything they had endured, for the terror of not knowing if she would truly be all right. In the next room, Alec reclaimed his position in the chair beside the bed. The house had fallen quiet. Most of the staff had retired for the night. Only the security detail remained active, monitoring cameras and patrolling grounds. His phone lit up with another message from Arthur. They had located two of the men involved in the attack, both confirmed to be part of Callum's crew, one named Devin Clark, the other Liam Foster. Clark had the snake tattoo. Foster was the muscle. Both had been seen bragging about their work at a pub in Whitechapel earlier that evening. Alec's jaw clenched. He typed back a single word: acquire. Within the hour, both men would be in his warehouse, bound and waiting. But Alec would not go to them, not yet, not until Darcel woke and he knew she was stable. His revenge could wait a few more hours. It would be sweeter for the delay. Time crawled toward 3 in the morning. Alec's eyes burned with fatigue, but he refused to close them, refused to miss the moment when she opened hers. At 3:27, Darcel stirred. It started with her fingers twitching against the sheets. Then her head turned slightly on the pillow, a small movement that made her wince even in unconsciousness. Her breathing changed, becoming more rapid, more distressed. Alec leaned forward, every muscle tensing. Darcel, he kept his voice low, not wanting to startle her. You are safe. You are in my home. Her eyes moved beneath swollen lids, fighting to open. When they finally did, only one opened fully. The other remained nearly shut, bruised and damaged. Confusion clouded her gaze as she tried to focus on his face hovering above hers. She tried to speak. Her split lips formed words, but no sound emerged except a pained rasp. Do not try to talk. Alec reached for the water glass on the nightstand, one hand sliding beneath her head to help her lift just enough to take a small sip through a straw. You were badly hurt. You are recovering. She took 2 sips before turning her head away, the effort clearly exhausting. Her good eye tracked around the room, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings, the expensive furnishings, the windows showing darkness outside. Then her gaze landed back on him, and recognition sparked. Her employer, the man whose home she cleaned, the man she had spent 14 months avoiding. Fear chased the recognition. Her body tensed, tried to pull away from him despite the pain it caused. Easy. His hand remained on her shoulder, gentle but firm. You are safe here. No one will hurt you again. Her lips moved again. This time sound came out, broken and rough. Leo. Of course. Even now her first thought was her brother. He is here, in the next room, sleeping, unharmed. Alec watched relief flood her features, watched the tension leave her body. I brought him here so you would not worry, so you could both be protected. Questions filled her eye, confusion. She did not understand why Alec Holt cared what happened to his cleaning staff, did not understand why he would bring her brother into his home. The men who hurt you targeted you because you work for me, Alec explained, his voice taking on an edge. They saw my emblem on your shirt. They knew you were mine, and they hurt you to send me a message. Darcel's eye widened. She tried to shake her head, immediately regretting it as pain lanced through her skull. This was not her world. She wanted no part of whatever war these men were fighting. But Alec saw the protest forming and cut it off. You do not get a choice in this anymore. The moment they touched you, you became part of my world whether you wanted it or not. His gray eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breathing quicken. And I protect what is mine. There was that word again. Mine. Spoken with such certainty, such possession, that it sent a chill down her spine despite the warmth of the room. I am just... She had to stop, her throat too raw to continue. You are not just anything. Alec's hand moved from her shoulder to her cheek, careful of the bruises but unmistakably claiming. Not anymore. Tears leaked from her good eye. Whether from pain or fear or overwhelming confusion, she could not say. Everything hurt. Her body, her head, her ribs screamed with each breath. And now this man, this dangerous man, was looking at her like she belonged to him. Please, the word came out barely audible. I cannot afford whatever this costs. There is no cost. Alec's thumb brushed away her tears with surprising gentleness. Except this. You stay here. You let me keep you safe. You let me take care of you and your brother. And you let me handle the men who did this. She wanted to argue. Wanted to say she did not need his protection or his charity. But the truth was, she had nothing left. No savings, no strength, no options. And Leo needed care she could never provide alone. So she closed her eye and let the tears fall, accepting a bargain she did not fully understand with a man who terrified her. Sleep, Alec commanded softly. When you wake again, we will talk more. But for now, just sleep. I will be here. And as consciousness slipped away again, Darcel believed him. For better or worse, Alec Holt would be there, watching, protecting, possessing. She had become his whether she wanted it or not. When Darcel woke again, pale morning light filtered through the windows. Her body screamed with every breath, but her mind was clearer now, clear enough to understand the danger she was in, not from violence, but from debt, from obligation, from a world she had no business being part of. The chair beside her bed was empty. Alec Holt had finally left her alone. This was her chance. Darcel pushed herself upright, biting back a cry as her broken ribs protested. Sweat broke out across her forehead from the effort. Her vision swam, but she forced herself to swing her legs over the side of the bed. Her feet touched plush carpet. Everything in this room cost more than she earned in a year. Every hour she spent here added to a debt she could never repay. She had to leave. Had to get Leo and go before this generosity turned into something she could not escape. Standing proved harder than anticipated. Her legs shook, threatening to collapse. She gripped the nightstand for support, knocking over the water glass. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. She waited, listening for footsteps, but heard nothing. The door to Leo's room stood partially open. She could see him sleeping in the hospital bed, peaceful for the first time in months. Proper equipment surrounded him, medical supplies, everything they had needed but could never afford. Guilt twisted in her stomach, sharper than physical pain. She took one step toward the door, then another. Her body protested every movement, but fear drove her forward. Fear of owing a man like Alec Holt. Fear of what he might demand in return for this kindness. Men like him did not give without taking. She had made it 3 steps when the main door opened. Alec stood in the doorway, still wearing yesterday's clothes, black dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing the tattoos that crept up his neck. His gray eyes swept over her, taking in her position halfway between the bed and the door, taking in the determination on her battered face. "Where do you think you are going?" His voice was quiet, controlled, more frightening than if he had shouted. "Home." The words scraped out of her raw throat. "Leo and I need to go home." "You can barely stand." "That is not your concern." Darcel forced herself to remain upright despite her body's demand to collapse. "Thank you for your help, but we cannot stay here. We cannot afford this." Something dangerous flickered in Alec's expression. He stepped into the room and closed the door behind him with deliberate care. Afford what, exactly? Any of this. The doctor, the room, the equipment for Leo. Her voice cracked. "The debt is already impossible. I cannot add more to it." Alec moved closer, each step measured and predatory. Darcel wanted to back away but had nowhere to go. Her legs would not carry her far. "You think I'm keeping a ledger? Calculating what you owe me?" "Everyone keeps a ledger." Bitterness leaked into her words. "Nobody gives without expecting something back." "Sit down before you fall." It was not a request. Darcel's legs chose that moment to give out. Alec caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her as though she weighed nothing, carrying her back to the bed. He set her down with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about men like him. "Let me make something very clear." Alec remained standing over her, forcing her to look up at him. "You were hurt on my territory, by my enemies, because you wore my emblem. That makes what happened to you my responsibility, not charity." Responsibility. I do not understand the difference. Charity is optional, something given out of pity or goodwill that can be taken away just as easily. His jaw tightened. Responsibility is not optional. It is a debt I owe you, not the other way around. I failed to protect you. I failed to ensure my territory was secure. Your blood is on my hands because I did not do my job." Darcel stared at him, trying to process logic that made no sense in her world. In her world, the powerful took and the powerless gave. There was no responsibility flowing upward. "I am just cleaning staff." "Stop saying that." Alex's voice hardened. "Stop reducing yourself to a job title. You are a woman who was nearly beaten to death because of me, because someone wanted to hurt me and used you to do it. That gives me a responsibility to make it right. By keeping us here? Like prisoners? By keeping you safe. There is a difference." He pulled the chair closer and sat, bringing himself to eye level with her. "The men who hurt you work for Callum Shaw. Do you know that name?" She shook her head. "He runs the territory east of mine. We have been at war for 6 months over dock access and distribution routes. He is violent, unpredictable, and he now knows that hurting you hurts me." Alex's eyes never left hers. "If I let you leave, if I send you back to that flat in Brixton, he will find you again. And next time, he will not stop with a beating." Ice flooded Darcel's veins. "Why would he care about me? I am nobody." "You stopped being nobody the moment I carried you through my front door." Alec leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his face. "Callum is watching this house. His people are watching to see what I do next. If I throw you out, it tells him you mean nothing, that he can hurt you without consequence. But if I keep you here, if I protect you, it tells him you are under my protection, that touching you again means war." This is insane. Tears burned behind her eyes. "I just want to take care of my brother and survive. I do not want to be part of your war." "I know." Something almost like regret crossed his features. "But you do not get that choice anymore. Neither of us do. The moment they recognize that emblem, your life changed. I can either protect you, or I can let you die. Those are the only options." "What about what I want?" "What do you want?" "Darcel." He said her name like he had been practicing it, like it mattered. "Do you want to go back to working 3 jobs and 4 hours of sleep? Watching your brother suffer because you cannot afford proper care? Living one emergency away from complete ruin?" She wanted to say yes, wanted to cling to her independence even if it killed her. But she looked through the open door at Leo sleeping peacefully, and the words died in her throat. "I want my brother to walk again." "Then stay." Alex's voice gentled. "Stay here where he can have physical therapy, where specialists can see him, where you do not have to choose between his health and keeping a roof over your heads." "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Alex stood, looking down at her with an expression she could not read. "I get to know you are safe. I get to keep what is mine protected." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Get some rest. Dr. Kensington will be here soon to check your injuries." "And Darcel?" She looked up at him. "Stop trying to leave. You will not make it past the front gate, and I would rather not have to carry you back upstairs again." The door closed behind him, leaving Darcel alone with her thoughts and the dull ache of her body. She lay back against the pillows, defeated. He was right. She could barely walk across the room. Escaping was impossible in her current state. And even if she managed to get Leo out, where would they go? Back to their flat where Callum's men could find them? She was trapped, not by locks or chains, but by circumstances she could not control. A soft knock came at the connecting door to Leo's room. Before she could respond, it opened and Beatrice entered, carrying a tray with tea and toast. "I thought you might be hungry." She set the tray on the nightstand with practiced efficiency. "Dr. Kensington said you could try soft foods today, if you felt up to it." Darcel said nothing. She did not trust her voice, did not trust this woman who had always been kind to her, but was also Alec Holt's sister. Beatrice settled into the chair her brother had occupied all night. She was in her early 40s, elegant in a way that came from breeding rather than effort. Dark hair pulled back in a simple twist, kind eyes that held something deeper, sadness perhaps, or understanding. "You tried to leave." It was not a question. "I cannot stay here." Darcel's voice came out rough. "This is not my world." "No, it is not." Beatrice poured tea into a delicate cup. "But it is the world you are in now, whether you chose it or not. My brother has a way of pulling people into his orbit. Once you are there, leaving becomes complicated. He said I am his responsibility. You are more than that, though I suspect he does not fully understand it himself yet." Beatrice added honey to the tea and held it out. "Drink. It will help your throat." Darcel took the cup with trembling hands. The warmth felt good against her palms. She sipped carefully, the honey soothing the rawness. "You are afraid of him," Beatrice observed. "Should I not be?" "Perhaps. Alec is dangerous. He has done terrible things to maintain his position, but he is not cruel without reason." Beatrice's gaze drifted toward the window. "He was not always like this, cold, controlled. There was a time when he laughed easily, when he saw the best in people rather than calculating their weaknesses." Darcel found herself listening despite her desire to remain detached. What happened? Beatrice was quiet for a long moment, as though deciding how much to reveal. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of old pain. "Our father built this empire from nothing. He was ruthless but fair, respected. Alec idolized him." She paused, choosing her words. "When Alec was 22, our father made a deal with another organization, a partnership that would expand our territory and influence. He trusted them, believed their word meant something." Darcel could sense where this was leading. They betrayed him during a meeting, shot him in front of Alec and our younger brother. David. David was only 19. He tried to protect our father and was killed for it. Alec managed to get our father out, but he died 3 days later in hospital. 2 men dead because Alec's father trusted the wrong people. The tea in Darcel's hands had gone cold. She set it down, no longer tasting the honey. Alec inherited everything that night: the business, the territory, the responsibility for dozens of families who depended on us for their livelihoods. He was 22 years old and suddenly in charge of an empire with enemies on all sides. Beatrice's eyes met hers. He learned that night that trust is a luxury people like us cannot afford, that showing weakness gets people killed, that the only way to keep those you love safe is to be colder, harder, more ruthless than everyone else. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand what you are seeing when you look at my brother." Beatrice leaned forward. "That man who refuses to let you leave? Who carried you into this house and has not slept since? Who looks at you like you are something precious? That is not the monster everyone thinks he is." That is the man he was before he learned that caring about people gets them killed. Darcel's throat tightened. She did not want to feel sympathy for Alec Holt, did not want to see him as anything other than the dangerous criminal keeping her here against her will. He said, "I am his." What does that mean? It means he has claimed you, publicly. In our world, that is not something done lightly. Beatrice's expression turned serious. Once Alec claims something as his, he protects it with everything he has. He lost his father and brother because he could not protect them. He will not lose you too. But I am just... Darcel stopped herself before saying cleaning staff again. I am nobody important. You are important to him. That makes you important. Beatrice stood, smoothing her skirt. I know this is frightening. I know you want your old life back. But that life is gone now. The question is not whether you stay, but whether you fight what is happening or accept it. Accept what? That I belong to him? Accept that you are under his protection, that your brother will receive the best care available, that you will never have to work 3 jobs or skip meals or choose between medicine and rent again. Beatrice moved toward the door. My brother is not asking for your love or even your trust right now. He is asking you to let him keep you safe. Is that really so terrible? She left before Darcel could answer. The room fell silent, except for the sound of birds outside the window. Darcel looked around at the expensive furnishings, the medical equipment visible through the open door to Leo's room, the life Alec was offering them. A life built on blood and violence and control, but also a life where her brother could heal, where she could sleep more than 4 hours, where debt would not crush them slowly. She thought about Alec's face when he found her on the steps, the raw anguish in his voice when he asked who touched her, the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was something worth protecting. Maybe Beatrice was right. Maybe the man beneath the tattoos and the reputation was not the monster she feared. Maybe he was just someone who learned to build walls so high that nothing could hurt him again. And maybe, despite every instinct screaming at her to run, she was starting to understand why those walls existed. 3 days passed in a strange rhythm of healing and captivity. Dr. Kensington visited twice daily, monitoring Darcel's recovery with professional detachment. The swelling in her face had begun to recede, revealing the true extent of the damage beneath. Purple and yellow bruises painted her skin in violent patterns. Her ribs ached with every breath, but the sharp agony had dulled to a constant throb. Leo spent hours by her side, wheeling between their rooms, his presence both comfort and reminder of why she could not simply walk away. He was thriving here in ways that broke her heart. A physical therapist came each morning, working with him on exercises they could never have afforded. His face had color again. Hope had returned to his eyes. Alec appeared at odd hours, sometimes in the middle of the night when she woke from nightmares of fists and pain. Sometimes in the early morning with coffee he never drank himself. He rarely spoke during these visits, just sat in that chair and watched her with an intensity that should have been frightening, but somehow was not. She had stopped trying to understand him, stopped trying to categorize what was happening between them. He had declared her his, and she was beginning to realize that fighting it was futile. On the 3rd evening, as twilight painted the windows in shades of amber and gray, Arthur entered her room without knocking. His weathered face was grim, and he carried a tablet computer under one arm. "Miss Reed, I need you to look at something." Darcel sat up carefully, noting how Arthur's presence felt different from Alec's. Where Alec carried controlled danger, Arthur radiated the weary competence of a man who had seen too much. "What is it?" Photographs. I need you to identify the men who attacked you. Her stomach twisted. She had known this moment would come, had known Alec would demand answers, demand names. But facing the reality of it made her mouth go dry. I do not know if I can. Try. Arthur's tone was not unkind, but it left no room for refusal. He sat beside the bed and opened the tablet, swiping through images. Faces appeared on the screen. Some she recognized from the neighborhood. Others were strangers. Each swipe felt like turning pages in a book written in blood. Then she saw him. The shaved head, the cruel smile, the snake tattoo coiling up his wrist in black ink. Him! Her voice came out strangled. That one! He was there! He hit me first! Arthur's expression did not change, but something cold settled in his eyes. He made a note on the tablet. Are you certain? Yes. She would never forget that face. It lived in her nightmares. The tattoo, the way he looked at me like I was nothing. His name is Devin Clark, low-level enforcer for Callum Shaw, works mostly muscle jobs. Arthur swiped to another photo. Was anyone else with him? A second face appeared, broader, taller, silent menace captured in pixels. Yes, he held me while the other one hit me. He did not speak, but he was there. Liam Foster, Clark's usual partner. Arthur closed the tablet. Thank you, Miss Reed. That is all I needed. He stood to leave, but Darcel's voice stopped him. What will happen to them? Arthur paused at the door, considering how much to reveal. What needs to happen? They will die, will not they? Because of me. No. Arthur turned back, his gaze steady. They will die because they made a choice. They chose to attack an unarmed woman to send a message. They chose to touch what belongs to Alec Holt. Those choices have consequences. I do not want anyone to die because of me. Then you are in the wrong house, Miss Reed. Arthur's voice held no judgment, only truth. This is not a world where mercy is rewarded. This is a world where weakness gets you killed. Those men showed you no mercy when they beat you in that alley. They would have killed you if they thought it served their purpose. Do not waste sympathy on them. He left before she could respond. Darcel sat in the gathering darkness, Arthur's words echoing in her mind. She thought about the fists raining down on her, the laughter as she fell, the way they looked at her like she was an object, a message, a tool to hurt someone else. She should feel guilt, should feel horror at the thought of their deaths, but all she felt was hollow acceptance. Maybe Arthur was right. Maybe this world operated by different rules, rules she was only beginning to understand. An hour later, Alec entered her room. She knew before he spoke that Arthur had given him the names. It was written in every line of his body. The coiled tension, the lethal focus. This was not the man who brought her coffee in the morning. This was the man who had built an empire on blood. You identified them. Not a question. Yes. He moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the darkening gardens. When he spoke, his voice was conversational, almost pleasant, the kind of tone that promised violence. Devin Clark and Liam Foster. Both have worked for Callum for 3 years. Both have histories of assault, extortion, and intimidation. Both thought they were untouchable because Callum protected them. Alec. She did not know what she wanted to say, just knew she needed to say something. He turned to face her, and the look in his gray eyes made her breath catch. This was what Beatrice had warned her about, the ruthlessness that kept him alive in a world that devoured the weak. I am going to hurt them, Darcel. I am going to make them scream. I am going to make sure everyone in this city knows what happens when someone touches what is mine. His voice dropped to something barely human. And I need you to understand that this is not negotiable. This is not something you can talk me out of or bargain against. This is happening. She held his gaze, seeing the darkness there, the rage he had been containing for 3 days while she healed. I know. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that she was not arguing, that she was not pleading for mercy on behalf of men who had shown her none. Good. He moved toward the door, then paused. Arthur will stay with you tonight. I will be gone until morning. Where are you going? He looked back at her, and for just a moment she saw past the walls to the man Beatrice had described. The one who lost his father and brother, the one who learned that caring about people got them killed. To remind Callum Shaw that some lines cannot be crossed. The door closed behind him, and Darcel was left alone with the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness, 2 men were about to pay the price for touching her. The city would wake tomorrow to blood and fear, and she would be the reason why. The warehouse in Rotherhithe sat silent and dark when Alec arrived at 11:45 that night. His men had been efficient. Devon Clark and Liam Foster were bound to metal chairs in the center of the concrete floor, illuminated by a single overhead lamp that cast harsh shadows across their bruised faces. They had not come quietly. Alec stood in the doorway for a long moment, letting them see him, letting anticipation build into terror. Clark's eyes were wide, darting between Alec and the exits he would never reach. Foster remained stoic, but sweat gleamed on his forehead. Do you know who I am? Alec's voice carried across the empty space. Alec Holt, Clark stammered. Listen, we were just following orders. Callum said to send a message. We did not know she mattered to you. She wears my emblem. She works in my home. She walks my streets. Alec moved closer, each step deliberate. What part of that suggested she did not matter? Neither man answered. You put your hands on her. You beat her until she lost consciousness. You left her broken in an alley like garbage. Alec's voice remained conversational, which made it more terrifying. And you thought there would be no consequences. It was not personal, Foster said, speaking for the first time. Just business. It became personal the moment you touched her. Alec stopped in front of Clark. Tell me, did she beg you to stop? Clark's silence was answer enough. Did she cry? Did she try to fight back even though she had no chance against 2 grown men? Alec leaned down until they were eye level. Did you enjoy it? Please. Clark's voice cracked. We will leave London. You will never see us again. Just let us go. Let you go? Alec laughed, but there was no humor in it. The way you let her go after you finished beating her? That kind of mercy? What happened next in that warehouse would never be spoken of in detail. Alec Holt did not need to broadcast the specifics of his revenge. The screams that echoed through Rotherhithe until 3 in the morning told their own story. When Alec finally emerged, his knuckles were split and bloody, his clothes ruined, and his expression was calm as still water. Arthur waited by the car holding a clean shirt. It is done? Not yet. Alex stripped off the bloodied shirt and pulled on the fresh one. That was for Darcel. Now we send a message to Callum. What do you have in mind? Everything. Alex's smile was sharp as broken glass. I want him to understand what it costs to touch what belongs to me. And I want the entire city to watch. The sun rose over London at 6:23 that morning, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Most of the city was still sleeping, but Alec Holt and his organization were wide awake. At 7 o'clock precisely, 3 of Callum Shaw's betting shops went up in flames. Not explosions. Controlled burns that consumed the buildings while firefighters were mysteriously delayed by false calls across the city. At 7:30, every one of Callum's drug distribution points was raided simultaneously. Not by police, but by Alec's men wearing body cameras that streamed the seizures live to encrypted channels, watched by every major player in London's underworld. At 8:15, Callum's Club in Soho opened its doors to find every bottle of liquor smashed, every piece of furniture destroyed, and a message spray painted across the bar in letters 3 feet high. Touch what is mine and burn. By 9 o'clock, the entire city knew something unprecedented was happening. Social media erupted with videos and photos. Witnesses described coordinated attacks on Callum Shaw's empire. The scale was shocking. The precision was terrifying. And it was all happening in broad daylight for everyone to see. This was not underground gang violence hidden in shadows. This was a public execution of a criminal empire. At 9:30, Alec's men stormed Callum's warehouse in Limehouse where he kept his stolen goods. They did not steal anything. They simply burned it all, letting smoke rise into the clear morning sky like a signal fire visible for miles. The police were overwhelmed, responding to a dozen emergencies at once, unable to coordinate a response. By the time they arrived at each scene, Alec's people had already vanished like ghosts. At 10 o'clock, Callum Shaw himself was found by police, sitting in his car outside his primary office building, hands zip-tied behind his back, a message carved into his dashboard. This is mercy. There will not be a second warning. He was unharmed physically, but his empire had been systematically dismantled in 3 hours. Every revenue stream severed, every asset destroyed, his reputation shattered beyond repair. And everyone in London's criminal underworld knew exactly why it had happened. Because he had touched a woman who belonged to Alec Holt. The message reverberated through the city faster than any news broadcast. In pubs and corner shops, in boardrooms and back alleys, people whispered about what had happened, about the cleaner who had been beaten and the boss who had responded with apocalyptic fury. Alec returned to the estate at 11:30 that morning, exhausted but satisfied. The city was reeling, Callum was broken, and everyone now understood that there were lines that could not be crossed. He found Darcel in her room, standing by the window despite the pain it caused her ribs. She turned when he entered, taking in his appearance. Fresh clothes but exhaustion carved into every line of his face. Blood under his fingernails he had not quite scrubbed away. "It is all over the news," she said quietly. "They are calling it a coordinated attack, a gang war. They are saying Callum Shaw's organization has been destroyed." "Good. Let them talk." Alec moved to stand beside her at the window. "Let everyone know what happens when someone hurts what is mine." People saw. Everyone saw. There was something like awe in her voice. "You did not hide it. You wanted them to see." Hiding it would have been mercy. I wanted Callum to wake up every morning for the rest of his life and see the ashes of everything he built. I wanted every criminal in this city to know that touching you means total annihilation. He looked at her, gray eyes intense. I wanted you to know that I meant what I said. You are under my protection, permanently. Darcel said nothing for a long moment, processing the scale of what he had done. An empire destroyed, lives ruined, all because of her. Was it worth it? Yes. No hesitation. You are worth it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Darcel was only beginning to comprehend. She looked out at the gardens below, at the city beyond the estate walls, and realized with startling clarity that she could never return to the life she had known. That girl who cleaned in silence, who kept her head down and survived on 4 hours of sleep, no longer existed. She had been destroyed in that alley along with her innocence about how the world truly worked. The city is afraid, she observed quietly. I can feel it even from here. Good. Alex stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Fear keeps people alive. It reminds them there are consequences for their actions. And you are the consequence. I am whatever I need to be to protect what matters. He turned to face her fully. How are you feeling? Truthfully. Darcel considered the question. 2 weeks had passed since the attack. The swelling in her face had receded completely, leaving only fading yellow bruises. Her ribs still ached but no longer screamed with every breath. She could walk without assistance, sleep without nightmares waking her every hour. Better, stronger. She met his gaze, ready to figure out what happens next. What happens next is you stay here. You and Leo both. This is not temporary, Darcel. This is permanent. And what am I supposed to do? Just live here as your responsibility forever? Something dangerous flickered in his gray eyes. Is that really what you think you are? A responsibility? What else would I be? Alec moved closer, eliminating the space between them until she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. His hand came up to cup her jaw, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. You stopped being just a responsibility the moment I saw you broken on my steps. The moment rage like nothing I had ever known consumed me. The moment I realized I would burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you again. His voice dropped lower, intimate. You are mine, Darcel. Not because I feel guilty, not because I owe you something, but because I have decided you belong to me, and what I claim, I keep. Her breath caught. This was not protection, not obligation. This was possession. The kind that should have terrified her, but instead sent heat spiraling through her chest. I did not agree to belong to anyone. You agreed the moment you stopped trying to leave, the moment you let me care for you, the moment you looked at me and saw past the monster to the man beneath. His thumb traced her bottom lip. You can deny it all you want, but we both know the truth. She should argue, should maintain some illusion of independence. But Beatrice's words echoed in her mind. This was not a world where mercy was rewarded. This was not a world where she could survive alone anymore, and maybe, despite everything, she did not want to. What about Leo? Her voice came out softer than intended. What happens to him? Leo stays. I have already arranged for the best physical therapist in London to work with him exclusively. He will have everything he needs: education, medical care, a future. Alec's expression softened slightly. Your brother will never want for anything again. That is my promise to you. Tears burned behind her eyes. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing Leo would be safe, would have chances she could never have given him on her own. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why would you do all this for us? Because you matter to me. Simple words that carried the weight of everything unsaid. Because watching you survive on nothing but determination and hope made me remember what it felt like to care about something beyond territory and power. Because you looked at me like I was human when everyone else sees only the monster. You destroyed an entire organization because of me. I would destroy 1,000 more. No hesitation, no doubt. I would level this city if it meant keeping you safe. That is what you mean to me, Darcel. That is what you have become. She reached up, her hand covering his where it still cupped her jaw. His skin was warm, his grip steady. I am not the same person I was 2 weeks ago. Neither am I. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. That girl who moved through my home like a shadow is gone. The woman standing before me now knows exactly how dark this world can be, knows what I am capable of. And she is still here. I do not know what happens now. Now? Alec leaned down until his forehead rested against hers. Now you heal completely. Now you decide what you want your life to look like. Now you let me show you that belonging to me is not a prison, but freedom from everything that hurt you before. And if I want to leave someday, then I will let you go. The lie was obvious in his eyes. They both knew he would never release her. She was his now, marked and claimed in ways that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with the bond forged between them in blood and fire. But you will not want to leave. You sound very certain. I am. His lips brushed her temple, gentle, despite the possessiveness in his touch. Because I know what you need, even if you do not yet. Safety, security. Someone who will protect you without expecting you to be anything other than yourself. I can give you all of that and more. Down the corridor, she could hear Leo's laughter as his physical therapist worked with him. Real laughter, unburdened by pain or worry, the sound of her brother healing in ways she had thought impossible. Alec was right. She could not go back. The girl who had been invisible, who had survived on scraps and exhaustion, no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had seen the darkest parts of this world and chosen to remain anyway, who had looked at Alec Holt and seen past the violence to the man who had lost everything and built himself into something unbreakable. I am not invisible anymore, she whispered. No. Alec pulled back just enough to look at her properly. You are the most visible person in this city. Everyone knows you belong to me now. Everyone knows that touching you means war. Is that supposed to comfort me? It should, because it means you will never be hurt again, never be alone, never have to fight for survival. His gray eyes held hers with absolute conviction. You are mine, Darcel Reed, and I protect what is mine. She believed him, despite everything, despite the impossibility of their situation. She believed him. And maybe that was enough. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.